In the world of talent shows, performances come and go, but every once in a while someone steps onto the stage who doesn't just perform, they shift the energy of the entire room. Before we even begin, welcome back to the channel where unforgettable moments are brought to life through stories of talent, struggle, hope, and heart. Today's story is unlike anything you've ever heard. It's about a man whose job is heartbreakingly sad, but whose humor is powerful enough to bring both laughter and tears to one of the toughest judges in the world. This is the story of a Filipino comedian who walked onto the America's Got Talent stage in 2025 and left Simon Cowell holding his face in shock, wiping away tears, laughing uncontrollably, and applauding in a way the crowd had rarely seen. And yet, what made the moment unforgettable wasn't just his jokes. It was the truth behind them, a truth that hit harder than anyone expected. It all began with a man named Mateo Reyes, a 42-year-old from the Philippines who lived a life most people would never imagine. While others dreamed of glamorous careers, Mateo worked as a funeral assistant in a small town near Manila. For years, he prepared families for their final goodbyes. He carried coffins, cleaned rooms, organized viewings, and supported grieving families. Every day, he woke up knowing that sadness waited for him. His entire life revolved around loss. And yet, somehow, he found humor in the darkness. Growing up, he discovered that laughter could heal wounds that medicine couldn't. His father was a fisherman who was hardly home. His mother sold vegetables in the market, spending long hours under the sun. Money was always the enemy, and stress hung in the house like thick fog. But Mateo learned something early. If he could make his mother laugh after a long day, she forgot the pain for a moment. He began cracking jokes at the dinner table. Soon, his siblings would burst into laughter, doubling over as he reenacted teachers, television characters, and even the neighbors. But life pulled him in a different direction. There was no stage for him. No spotlight, only the constant need to survive. When his father fell ill, he left school early to work. A funeral home nearby offered him a job. It was not glamorous. It was not easy, but it paid, and Mateo took it without complaint. Over the years, he became well-known in his area. Not because of his job, but because even in the saddest moments, he still found a way to make people smile. Families would often request him specifically, saying his presence made things feel lighter. He would whisper jokes, tell funny stories about life, and help grieving relatives breathe again for just a moment. And one day, a visiting American tourist attending a funeral noticed him. After the service, she approached him and said something that changed his life. "You should audition for a talent show. The world needs someone like you." He laughed it off at first. But she insisted. The idea stuck with him for months. One night, after another long shift, after cleaning a room that held more grief than any human heart should absorb, he sat alone and watched videos of AGT auditions. Watching singers, dancers, magicians, comedians, and dreamers of all kinds take their shot. Something in his chest stirred. He grabbed his old phone and recorded a shaky audition tape. He didn't expect anything, but fate had other plans. Months passed, and one ordinary afternoon, while he was preparing flowers, his phone rang with an international number. He froze when he heard the voice. "Congratulations, we'd like to invite you to audition for America's Got Talent 2025. His knees nearly gave out. He dropped the flowers. His coworkers screamed. He felt like his heart had exploded in his chest. For the first time in his life, someone believed he was more than just the man who cleaned rooms of silence. His family didn't believe him at first. They thought he was joking. But when the confirmation email came, everyone in his home burst into celebration. He cried quietly that night, not out of fear, but gratitude. He dreamed of giving his mother a real home, helping his younger sister go to school, and proving that someone who spent his life surrounded by sadness could still bring joy to the world. When the day arrived, he boarded a plane for the first time. The flight attendants had to help him with his seatbelt because he was shaking too much. He stared out the window the entire time, whispering prayers and rehearsing jokes under his breath. When he finally stepped onto American soil, he felt like he was walking inside a movie. Tall buildings, crowded streets, a world far from anything he had known. And then came the day that would change everything. He stood backstage at the AGT studio, hands trembling, stomach twisting into knots. The bright lights, the screaming audience, the iconic red buzzers, everything overwhelmed him. But nothing frightened him more than the expressionless stare of Simon Cowell, the judge who could make or break anyone's dream with a single raised eyebrow. When his name was called, he stepped out into the open. The stage lights hit him like a wave. The audience clapped politely, not yet knowing who he was. The judges waited silently, observing his movements. Simon leaned forward. "Tell us who you are." Mateo took a shaky breath. "My name is Mateo Reyes. I'm from the Philippines, and I work at a funeral home." The entire crowd gasped. Some laughed nervously. Even the judges exchanged surprised glances. Simon raised an eyebrow. "A funeral home?" Mateo nodded. "Yes, sir. I help families say goodbye. But today, I hope to make everyone say hello to laughter." The audience erupted in cheers. Simon smirked, intrigued. "All right," he said. "Let's hear it." Mateo closed his eyes, inhaled deeply, and began. His first joke hit like a spark. "People think my job is scary. But trust me, the scariest thing is when the client tries to leave before the paperwork is signed." The audience exploded in laughter. The judges leaned forward, already hooked. His timing was perfect, his face expressions exaggerated, his delivery smooth. He moved around the stage with charm that didn't feel rehearsed. He joked about working night shifts, about hearing strange sounds, about families who refused to believe their loved ones were gone, about how he sometimes whispered to the bodies just so he didn't feel alone. And then he delivered one of his strongest lines. "You know your job is sad when your coworkers ask you how your day was, and you say, 'Quiet.' Too quiet." Even Simon, known for his stone-cold expressions, burst into laughter, covering his face with both hands. The camera zoomed in to catch tears forming in the corners of his eyes. He wiped them, shaking his head. How he laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. Heidi clapped rapidly, shouting, "He's hilarious." Sophia mouthed the word unbelievable. But beneath the humor, something deeper started to appear. Mateo shifted. His tone softened but remained playful. "People always ask me why I'm such a happy person when my job is so sad. I tell them, because someone has to bring light where there is darkness. When I see a family crying, I don't want to add to their pain. So I smile. I make jokes. I try to remind them that life still has laughter left in it." Suddenly, the room grew quieter. Even Simon's smile faded into something gentler. The cameras captured the weight in Mateo's eyes. He continued, "I know what sadness feels like. I've lived with it my whole life. But if I can make even one person laugh, even for a moment, then my life is not wasted." The audience fell silent. The air vibrated with emotion. And then, without warning, Mateo delivered a punchline that caused the entire room to burst into uncontrollable laughter. "Because if I don't make them laugh, then they might think I'm the next guest at the funeral home." How he slapped the table, nearly crying from laughing too hard. Sophia grabbed Heidi's arm and leaned back in her chair. Even Simon had to bite his lip to stop from losing control. But the moment that shocked everyone came next. Mateo paused, looked directly into the camera, and said softly, "I dedicate this performance to my father. He passed away last year. He never got to see me on a stage. But he always told me, 'Son, if you make people laugh, you'll never be truly poor.'" Simon froze. His expression softened completely. He inhaled slowly, visibly moved. The audience let out a collective sigh. Mateo continued, "I work with people who can no longer laugh. But tonight, I want to laugh for all of them." The crowd rose. Chairs scraped. Hands lifted. The roar of applause filled the studio like a wave crashing against the shore. The judges stood, clapping. Even Simon rose slowly from his seat, the audience screaming as they saw him standing up with his hands pressed together. Then he did something no one expected. Simon lifted his index finger to signal silence. The entire studio grew quiet instantly. He looked directly at Mateo and said, "You walk on this stage saying your job is sad. But tonight, you brought more joy to this room than many professionals we've had in years. You're not just funny, you're real, you're human, you're brilliant, and you have a gift that comes from the deepest parts of your heart." The audience erupted again, but Simon wasn't done. "And Mateo, you made me laugh harder than I've laughed in a long time. And you made me feel something. That's rare. That's very rare." Mateo covered his face, overwhelmed. Tears streamed down his cheeks. He wasn't expecting this. He had dreamed of a yes, but what came next left him speechless. Simon reached out, and slammed the golden buzzer. The moment the gold confetti exploded from above, the entire room erupted into screams. The stage turned into a shimmering cloud of gold. Mateo fell to his knees, crying uncontrollably, his hands shaking as the golden rain fell on his shoulders. He didn't try to hide his emotion. He let it wash over him, covering him with the same dream that had stayed hidden in his heart for decades. Simon walked to the stage and hugged him, another unexpected moment that sent shockwaves through the audience. Cameras flashed, people cried, even backstage, crew members wiped away tears. In that moment, Mateo wasn't a funeral assistant. He wasn't a man who lived surrounded by grief. He wasn't someone who grew up poor or struggled silently for years. He was a star, a man who turned pain into power. A man who proved that even in the darkest places, laughter can still bloom. When the confetti settled and Mateo walked off stage, he was trembling, overwhelmed, and speechless. Interviewers rushed toward him, but he could barely talk. He just kept repeating, "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. My father, my mother, my family, thank you." Backstage, Howie approached him first, giving him a high five. "You're incredible, man. You're going to go far." Heidi hugged him tightly. "You deserve every second of this." Sophia wiped her eyes. "You made us laugh and cry at the same time. That's a gift." But the most emotional moment came when Simon himself walked backstage during a break. Everyone gasped. Judges rarely leave their seats during recording. But Simon made his way directly to Mateo. He placed a hand on his shoulder. "I meant every word," Simon said softly. "Keep your heart, keep your humor, and keep going." Mateo nodded, tears returning. "Thank you, sir. You don't know what this means to me." Simon smiled. "Oh, I do. More than you think." That night, Mateo called his mother back home. She was crying before he even said a word. She had watched the live broadcast, screaming at the TV as golden confetti rained down on her son thousands of miles away. Mateo could barely speak. His voice trembled with pride, gratitude, and disbelief. When the episode aired worldwide, the internet exploded. Clips of his jokes went viral across platforms. Reactions poured in from celebrities, comedians, funeral directors, healthcare workers, and everyday people from around the world. Hashtags related to him trended globally. News articles praised him as the most unexpected star of AGT 2025. Countless viewers wrote comments saying his performance gave them hope, made them laugh after a hard day, or reminded them that life is still beautiful even when heavy. But the most powerful messages came from people who had lost loved ones. They wrote that his jokes helped them breathe again, that his words reminded them joy still existed, that his courage gave them strength. Mateo couldn't believe it. His phone buzzed non-stop for days. His audition clip became one of the most viewed AGT videos of the season. And everywhere he went, people recognized him. They hugged him, they thanked him, they cried with him. For the first time, the man who carried grief for a living carried something else, love from around the world. As he prepared for the live shows, he knew the pressure was enormous. The golden buzzer meant expectations were high. Millions of people were waiting to see what he would do next. But instead of fear, he felt motivation. He wanted to honor his father. He wanted to give his mother a better life. He wanted to inspire people who felt small, unseen, or stuck in sadness. Every night leading up to the live show, he practiced relentlessly. He wrote new jokes, tested them in small comedy bars, and sent recordings to friends back home for feedback. He even visited hospitals, performing short comedy bits for patients, spreading laughter wherever he went. The night of the live show arrived. The audience was electric. Fans held signs with his name. Some wore shirts with printed golden confetti designs. The judges smiled the moment they saw him walk out. And once again, he delivered. He brought the house down with jokes about fame, culture, language differences, and his ongoing challenges with his job back home. He joked about being recognized at funerals, about families asking for selfies with the funny guy from AGT, about using humor to survive the hardest parts of life. But at the end of his performance, he added a sincere statement. "I may work with death every day, but on this stage, you all made me feel alive." The crowd roared, and Simon, once again deeply moved, stood up before anyone else, clapping powerfully. The rest of the season was a roller coaster of emotions. Mateo continued performing, touching hearts, and rising through the ranks. But whether he won or not, one thing became clear: he had already changed lives. His story became a reminder that even the saddest jobs can hold pockets of joy. That even people surrounded by darkness can still become light. That humor isn't just entertainment, it's survival. And that sometimes, the people who make us laugh the hardest, are the ones who have cried the most. Mateo's journey from a funeral home in the Philippines to the AGT stage in 2025 will forever be remembered as one of the most powerful, emotional, and unexpectedly hilarious performances in the show's history. He taught the world that laughter can bloom anywhere, even in places where grief lives. And he proved that dreams don't expire, not with age, not with hardship, and not with sorrow. His job was sad, his jokes were powerful, and on one unforgettable night, a Filipino comedian made the toughest judge in the world cry and laugh at the same time. A moment that will live on forever.